Empowering humanity, supporting unity. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PAZMESA Playhouse. I'm Janie, the Mindfulness Coach.
And I'm Angel Santiago, also known as Life Coach Angel.
Yes, and this is the place where you come to play, slay, and lay down the way to be your realest, truest, most awesomest self.
Well, this is episode 3. Episode 3. And we've been breaking down the PEACE acronym, right? Because the first episode was what is peace?
Yes.
Then we talked about the P in peace, which is patience.
Yes, it was patience.
And now we're talking about the E, which is equanimity.
Equanimity.
And that's a badass word.
That's super awesome.
It's a great word.
I like the way it feels. I like the way it sounds. I have a little story about the first time I heard that word, but I won't go into it quite yet. Just so you get the other letters to the PEACE acronym that we are here delivering on our little podcast, PAZMESA Playhouse. This is also our PAZMESA table. This is our peace table. We are bringing a discussion about the things that one would be wise to master if they would like to experience peace in their life. Because when you're at peace within, which is what PAZMESA means, that means your vitality is up, your immunity is up, your creativity is up. There's a lot of cool things. Prosperity is up. You just feel an inner sense of peace. You don't really need external things to bring you peace like you used to. And that's a process in itself. And Angel and I have been working through this self-exploration process and personal transformation and growth. And there's a lot of things that we've learned. And one of the things we realize is that peace, you have to know patience, equanimity, acceptance, compassionate curiosity, and equality. You have to really understand what these words are and how they apply to you individually and how it applies to us as a collective. Collectively. And we really want people to tap into their peace pulse, which is what PAZMESA is all about. It's getting us tapped into these principles that are going to be adding to our lives.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's like we want to share these pieces of peace, right? Because that's what they are. They're pieces that create peace. And how we use them and how they have helped us. And hopefully that can inspire you to be like, I want to try that. That's what I want. There's a possibility that if I try that, I could have the same result. Like it could, So it's like, you might as well just give it a shot, Exactly. And so the piece that we're going to talk about today is equanimity. But first, what is equanimity?
Okay, so here, I looked up equanimity. I'm a geek in that way. I feel like at least 5 times a week, a word will come to my mind and I'll be like, what is the meaning of this? Or like, what is the etymology? I like to kind of stay on my toes when it comes to words. And equanimity was a word that a friend told me about 6 years ago. She's a dear friend of mine. I've known her since I was 15 years old. And we both kind of started going through this spiritual awakening and dark night of the soul kind of thing at the same time. And when we would hold space for each other, we would get little messages or inklings, like we get for each other. And she was like, equanimity. And I was like, equanimity? She was like, I don't know, that word is coming in really strongly. And that's going to be a word that's going to be a big part of you in your life, in your journey, in your work. Dude, I was like, well, what does it mean? I want to know what it means. And so here it is. Hopefully I have it. Y'all should have a really cool quote. Is that a Carl Jung quote?
Yeah. But
I love it. Okay, here we go. Equanimity. Mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation.
Say it again.
Okay, again, I'll read it, but I didn't say it. It's a noun. Okay, it's a noun. Mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation.
Wow.
I know.
That is so good. When I first heard the word, I saw this, I looked it up because I also want to know what those things mean, right?
Yeah.
And I saw this image, and this is how it's shown a lot. It's an image of like a stone on the bottom, and then a flat stone that's a little longer, almost like a balancing act, like a seesaw, right?
Yeah.
And on one side it's like really heavy, like a lot of stones, and then on the other side like very little.
Yeah.
And everything's like even keel, like everything's balanced. Everything's like it's like equanimous. It's like that neutral zone. Like everything balances out.
Yes. And I think part of
It's
equanimity.
an evenness.
Yes. And there's a lot of
a neutrality.
Thank you. And guess what? Objectivity, when one understands and understands and overstands, that's a whole thing in itself. When you understand yourself and understand, meaning you understand like your subconscious impulses.
Yeah, what's under it,
what's
what's
under
in it,
what's
in,
through it,
what's on top of
and
it.
then what's the bigger picture of what's going on.
Right.
So there's an innerscape that's happening because of an underscape that's going on. That when you get to this place where Angel and I have gotten to a place in our walk where we are able to be an observer of self, and we're able to hold space for the physical part of what we might be feeling, and seeing and feeling this like overstanding or whatever you want to call it, so that we can maintain our stability. But that's taken different practices for you, like,
and a lot of difficulty, and willing to I want to say put ourselves, but in a way putting ourselves in situations that we know is going to be painful.
Yes.
Like, but I know that who's going to come out on the other side is going to be better for it. Like, I'm going to grow from this. And like just recently, just to give you an example, because the definition says, especially during challenging situations, right? Bingo. Especially during challenging situations. And I recently just got broken into, right in here. We broke in. They stole a lot of valuable things from me. And when I got home, I have friends that they recently got broken into, and they were like cursing. They were so upset. And I'm not saying it's not an upsetting experience, because it is an upsetting experience. But then my response was, okay, well, I went to the physical plane. Well, okay, mental and physical. Mm-hmm. They broke in.
Right.
And
that's a real thing that happened.
Yeah. And in truth, it's just stuff. Right. Like, I can replace this stuff.
Yes.
And then I went to this other place where like I immediately felt like, let me just pray for them.
Right.
Let me just bless them. Hopefully, like, the money that they get from the stuff, it'll help them get out of their situation that they're in. Yeah. And hopefully one day, they can find the light. That's what I hope for them, that they can get out of the situation that they're in, Right. That this helps them in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And then I looked for the emotional and spiritual component of the experience. Like, well, what's happening? Mm-hmm. Well, someone physically broke in. Someone like and forced themselves into my life, into my home. Like, they broke in, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was having a little bit of difficulty, a challenging communication with certain people in my life. That in those moments, I was being
they felt like you were invading
like I was
their
being
space.
A little too forceful and wanting to understand, because of the desire to understand what's happening, right? And it's like I was being a little too forceful. I can't break into people. I can't force my will into people just because I want to understand and I want to help.
Yes.
And so I had to look at that, and it's like, dang, here's someone forcing their way in to show me the lesson that I needed to learn. Yeah. So it's what she's talking about, is being able to look at life that way.
Yes.
That it doesn't have to be like on top of despite of a challenging situation, that you can be even, you can be neutral, and you can look at it from many different points of view to really draw out how it's actually helping you.
Right.
How it's actually helping you, not here to hurt you.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, since it has already happened, one of the letters in peace is acceptance, right? So just because we're allowing and accepting like the reality of what happened, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna, like you said, feel a certain way, but you have done so much work so that you can have the resilience and you have the mindset that goes right away into problem solving. And like gathering the data the way that he was sharing, like, oh, I went through, well, what does this mean physically? Okay, this is like, sure, it's going to take a little bit of my time and day
maybe my
money, and also too, it had to be a little bit unnerving to know that people kind of invaded your space, and it kind of, I don't know if you experienced like any kind of, you felt like it was fine. Okay, that's good.
I felt a lot of peace.
That's another thing. See, had he not, he would have known exactly what to do so that he could return back to his peace. Right. Because any kind of fear or worry, it just exacerbates inflammation inside of the body. In that moment, it's like you can't control what already took place. You can control how you're going to perceive. it and how you're going to move forward. And back in the day, in situations like this, maybe you would have caved.
Right.
But because you've done so much interpersonal work and trauma adjustment and attitude adjustment and honoring
and trusting
and
the
being
process,
devoted,
and
trusting the process and being devoted to his faith. Like faith
and
in that all is in divine order despite the chaos.
Right, all is well. And not even that, but there was also a physical lesson there too, because I'm the type of person I can be really trusting.
I know.
And like that makes me I can be naive. I used to be a lot more naive before.
Yeah.
So now it's like being more aware of things, being more situational awareness, more of like, maybe you shouldn't do that again, or maybe don't leave that there, or maybe put some cameras, or like, I put some cameras. So I made some shifts in the physical plane, and I made shifts in the emotional, spiritual realm as well.
And I like that you brought that up, because there's the word discernment. And discernment, it's almost like you can be cautious, but you're not fearful, worried.
Right.
And I am the same way. But
discernment also includes taking action. Like, okay,
yes.
How do we solve this?
How do we solve this? It's not passive. It's a perfect. It's active. And also relax.
It's not aware. It's concerning ourselves and taking care of the things that we need to do to find the solution here.
Exactly. And I think also too, we had touched on the previous episode, I believe, about resistance and like how surrender plays into it, and equanimity. He was talking about the scales, and there's a lot within ourselves that we have to equalize or neutralize. Yes.
The yin and yang within.
Exactly. So the left and the right brain.
The masculine and the feminine.
And then we have the thinker feeler, and then you have the intellectual, the intuitive, and the instinctual, which is a 3-parter in itself. That there's like duality and polarity.
There's a convergence that happens of all those parts so that discernment can happen.
Exactly.
Like in the moment,
Yes. When
it's like boom,
when you understand the principles and how the yin yang are actually complementary sources as opposed to opposing forces. Right. And that's what we've been conditioned. We've actually been trained and programmed and conditioned.
That they're opposite.
That a gender defines what brain you should be operating from and what emotions are allowed and not allowed. And so there's a lot of ideologies and narratives that got wrapped around.
Because technically we have access to both of them. And we have all those qualities available to us, and we can use them at any given time.
Yes.
Regardless of your physical gender, sex, whatever you want to call that, regardless of the physical, or your sex or your gender, because it could be both. Regardless of your gender, you still have access to both of those.
Yes, and I think also now for us, equanimity really plays into immunity, and equanimity goes to balance, which is harmony, which is homeostasis, which is equilibrium. And when you really understand, when you venture into understanding what emotional intelligence means, and start to learn and unlearn and heal and get the tools necessary so that you can understand how to put words to what you're feeling in your body and what you're thinking and what you're feeling. Because when we can't express ourselves, it really agitates us.
Right.
And so equanimity is being able to be an effective balance of active listening and being able to effectively, honestly and effectively is really important to have like self-expression, and I think that's another thing that causes a lot of congestion and a lot of frustration in people. And so understanding how to do that and know that your thinker and your feeler both matter, and that your heart really matters, and what do you really need to feel safe and balance. And people think it's like perfect balance of work and play, and there's a lot of pieces to it, but I want to hand it over to you so you can read the quote, and then we can talk about the different ways in which we can bring harmony or like peace or equanimity into our lives. Maybe some practical things. Good. Okay.
So it's interesting that we bring up the yin and the yang and those forces within us, because this is a quote by Carl Jung. So Carl Jung, he created Jungian psychology. So you may know about them. If not, look them up.
Dope is dope. Yeah. I've learned so much from this guy.
So it says, even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy will lose its meaning if we were not balanced by sadness. It is far better take things as they come along with patience and equanimity.
And I love how the quote has the word patience because that's the P,
The P.
and peace is patience. And we can actually do several episodes just on patience, but we wanted to start like bringing equanimity into the conversation.
And that's the thing that I think most of us, we don't want any darkness in our lives.
Yeah.
We push away those things that are difficult and hard to accept and hard, like anything that has to do with struggle and pain, because we're running away from pain and running towards pleasure all the time. And it's like, if we can stop seeing them as like opposing forces, like you're saying,
right,
or like as in they have like negative and positive, like they're just neutral. They're just two different perspectives that are coming to help see yourself in a situation or learn something about a situation so that you can really master yourself. You know, that's really what we're here to do. So these perspectives, that's all I can call them. They're just perspectives of you. They're giving you the opportunity to see that. And it's like, oh, so how do I improve myself? Okay, well, how about in this particular situation, you do this differently next time? And the only way you're going to know that is if you go through it.
Go through it and give yourself permission to do something different.
Right.
You'll feel the momentum and the autopilot knee-jerk reaction of what you normally do in a scenario. Like at the episode 1, we talked about, was it episode 1 or 2, where it's like, hey, list what really grinds your gears, like what really gets under your skin, and just make a list, just free flow, little, big, whatever, and then pick one, right, and then use the SNAP method.
That's what we said.
Yeah, you can check that out. SNAP. It's like
check the first episode.
Exactly. When you're able to do that, it gives you the ability to have the inner, what's the word, fortitude and ability to feel those like those waves of like, well, and then to do the opposite is, I know that there's people that are watching this, and I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. That when you're like, oh snap, funny enough, snap. Oh snap, I totally did the thing that I've been wanting to do. Here was the moment, and I did it.
And I did. Like when you pass that test, it feels so good.
And you register a new synapse in the brain and the body. And that's why this piece, tapping into this piece of peace and patience and equanimity and all this stuff about peace, we must in real time do the work. Like meditation and all this other stuff that we're doing, it's super awesome.
They support it.
It supports.
What allows it.
Yes, it gives you what you need in those moments. When the moment strikes and you're jolted,
and that's when you got to do it.
That's when you got to do it, and you will build your equanimity.
And you got to be willing to mess it up too.
Oh, 100%.
Like you're not gonna be right. Like if you're just starting to flex a skill, or a new muscle, or a new ability, or a new way of communicating, or a new way of showing up as yourself, you're gonna mess it up. You're gonna stumble a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
you're gonna mess it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Just a little bit.
And that's expected, and that's okay. But like that shouldn't like persuade you from trying. You know. And the best visual that I can give you is, imagine like the old school pinball machines.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, playing the old school pinball machines, right? You got the thing that sends that ball into play, and there's those little buttons that control the flaps, right? The little flaps. The purpose of the flaps is to get the ball up and keep it in the game.
Oh yeah.
And the flaps are getting that ball to score the most amount of points possible.
Yeah, and I love when it like.
Yeah, and then you want to get it in that one spot, and you want to get it in that spot that gives you like the 100,000 points.
You're like a million.
But it's so hard to get it in there, and you're trying to put it in there, right? So we got the flaps, right? You got the paddles, right? And I'm gonna label one of those paddles good, like the good experiences, the ones we love the most, like we want them, right? The highs. Right, we want the lights.
We want the mountain highs, but we don't want the valley lows.
So I'm gonna label.
You better appreciate them valley lows. How would you appreciate the high without the low? Okay, go
So I'm gonna label the other paddle.
What you gonna name it?
Bad.
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 The bad
just like the good egg and the bad egg.
Right. So now, are you gonna play with just the good paddle?
Are you?
Are you gonna play with just the good paddle?
Are you? How are you gonna is the ball gonna go anywhere with just one paddle?
You'll get some shots. If it comes straight to that paddle,
sure.
But if it goes to the other one, it's gonna go down the gutter. So you gotta use both paddles to play the game, to win the game. The paddles are helping you. So the good, the bad, the highs and the lows, it's all helping you win the game.
We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
The I Evolve podcast is a podcast focusing on the evolution of an individual who is in continuous motion towards their best self.
Rise Above TV offers mindful content for optimal living and loving. Check out P3, where conscious entrepreneurs share how they've tapped into their power, passion, and purpose. Season 3 coming soon. Life is a roller coaster, man.
It is, man.
Okay, like your heartbeat, how does the beat go? Like your brainwave and heart wave, it goes like this. Boop, boop. Actually, I have this. Look at this. Here we go, guys. Here's a little geek out info here. It's the brain states and the goal, like when you meditate, you go into this alpha theta. This is like when you're sleeping here, but like loose, real relaxed.
Calm.
Yeah, and so we're here all the time, and then you're not getting good rest. When you do breath work, or when you do meditation, you're putting your brain waves and your heart waves in what's called coherence. Because when you're stressed and agitated, yeah, it's like anyway. Point is, the fact that it has the high and the low, right? The wave, we are the wave. Look at, right?
Yeah.
Like going back to, I can't remember if we started with body of water at all, but there's something about ocean pulse, high, low. Mm-hmm. Oh, we wouldn't be able to appreciate the waves of the ocean because you need the crest
right.
and the trough. And our own pulse is high, low.
Right.
So if we can get to an understanding that there's going to be some highs and lows
That's
in
how
life.
life operates.
Life operates like that. And this is the awesome thing though. Okay, guys, when you realize that and you surrender to the polarity and duality, you'll experience more pleasure. You will naturally experience more peace and pleasure. And like he said, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, but get curious about what are your true desires and your pleasures.
Right.
And how much pain and stress versus rest and relaxation are you really getting? That goes back to equanimity. You really give a shit about your immunity, how your being is impacting your well-being. And the thing is, we've been conditioned and shown a way of living in a paradigm of life that is actually not sustainable for longevity.
Right.
It actually creates stress. And when you're stressed, it's going to bleed into your parenting.
And it's going to create disease.
And disease. When you're not at ease mentally and emotionally, you're not at ease. That's dis-ease. And then that creates inflammation and then it impacts the flesh.
Yeah.
And we need to finally start taking empowerment and accountability and responsibility for how we are thinking, speaking, being, what are we doing? And so equanimity, one of the real simple basic things that people can do, and I'm sure you do this with your clients and even your friends and yourself.
Before you go there really quick.
Sure.
What we're about to do and what we're doing with this podcast is being able to teach, because what we really have to learn is how to master the down wave.
Right, like how do we
deal with the downs? Because we love the high.
Yes, but this is what's neat. When you deal with the lows like the way you're talking about in a mindful way. By the way, Rise Above TV, empowering humanity, supporting unity, subscribe, like, share, blah, 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 all that stuff, because this is about the mindfulness movement. And this content is about mindfully loving and living. And when you're mindful of yourself in that way, then you then experience more yumminess in life. There's more richness and more, you get, I call them like bliss, there's blissings, you know what I mean? You're learning lessons in the lows of life and understanding how to just breathe.
Yeah, because you got to learn how to take out the honey, the sweet stuff from that low, because that low is very powerful also. And we could really, really use that. Yeah. Instead, we just get thrown off by it, which is also understandable. I got thrown off many times when I first started wanting to like if it's really like surfing.
Oh, that's why I call it soul surfing.
Yeah, you're gonna go try to ride that wave. You know how many times you're gonna fall? You're gonna fall a lot. But then eventually you figure it out. Yeah. And then you ride that wave. So it's the same thing we need to do with the low points of the lows of our lives, is learn how to master the down wave. Yeah. And this is really what we're about to go into.
Yeah, because I like to just really, on the waters of that, when you understand how to be a soul surfer, that's one thing. And then you learn how to be like sort of a deep sea diver, because when the waters of life get really choppy, you either have to learn how to kind of like be on a driftwood and go with it, or you go under. And when you understand metaphorically how that applies to us mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, for yourself personally, you get assistance and start figuring that out, then you got the tools. It's no longer like, oh my God, look what's happening with the water. Look at the weather. Look at the. It's like you become a badass navigational.
Like you know what to do.
You know how to navigate life, no matter what it throws at you.
So now with knowing what to do in those moments, here are some of the tools that, how we can bring equanimity into our life.
So one of the things that I like to do with my clients and even with my own self is write down a bunch of words and then the opposite of them. So like, for instance, joy. And what's the opposite of joy? And you start doing this in like how much play time versus like work time, how much screen time versus green time, like in nature, how much doing versus just being, how much talking versus not talking, how much alone time do you have, and how much are you around other people and doing social activity? Because some people are addicted, they're never alone. And then when they are, they feel really uncomfortable. Right. And then there's some people that are complete isolation.
And when they go in public, they're uncomfortable.
Right, exactly. So I'm sure you have other ideas and things that you could add to the list that people could kind of consider. And then you can kind of gauge and you see your levels in this. And
like
then,
how off balance are you?
Right.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
That'd be a cool exercise.
Because that's going to also help you see why your energy levels are low and why your sleep patterns are a little bit off and you're not getting very much rest, because those things are really off. Yes.
They're too like, they're out of whack.
Yeah. And also too,
equanimity. Like you too much on one side versus the other.
Yeah. Like giving and receiving evaluate your like friendships and connections, relationships, we'll say, that you're not stuck in, but you might think you're stuck in, and see how reciprocal are they,
right,
in terms of like equal
the energy exchange.
Yeah, energy exchange. That also plays into sort of equanimity.
I guess the one I would say would be like, because it's about like how to respond differently.
Yes.
Especially like in difficult situations or challenging or uncomfortable situations. It would be doing do-overs or redos. Like anytime you show up in a conversation with someone, whether that be a friend, your partner, your significant other, your children, a coworker, a boss, it doesn't matter who. Anytime you show up to an interaction with someone where you show up not in the most authentic self or in integrity with yourself, then you can do a do-over. And you're like, man, I should have responded like this, or like it would have been more ideal if I had said that, or it would have been like, you find what was that. How could you have shown up better in that interaction? So you could have had a better result.
Yes.
And so then you can just say like, hey, so-and-so, I'd like to have a conversation with you because the other day when we talked, or the other day when we had that thing happen and I overreacted or whatever, like I didn't show up with an integrity with myself. I didn't handle that conversation to the best that I could.
Right. I
like to talk to you about that. And then you do a do-over.
Yeah.
You say, hey, what I should have said was this, and this is really how I feel about that. Because even though it happens after, you're still telling your brain, you're still training your brain, and you're sending that signals like, hey, next time, this is the better approach.
Right. This is what I prefer.
Right. This is what I prefer. So now you're like practicing that. Yeah. Like this is how I really like to show up, and so it starts to train the mind to choose that other path. If you never choose it, even if it's afterwards, the brain never gets to flex that muscle. It never gets to flex that skill. So even after the fact, especially with your significant other, that's a great place to practice. Like, hey, do over, or redo.
Yep.
Can we do that over again?
It's a really beautiful way to add safety.
Then you start over. Yeah, and so that's now you're training yourself to act differently in an uncomfortable situation.
Yes, and that has a lot to do with. I believe we may have touched on this on episode 1, but you can't have authenticity without vulnerability and humility. Right. And it's in that there's like integrity. And that's when that has a lot to do with equanimity. So
but doing
do-overs,
alone.
It is literally flexing vulnerability and humility, which is creating authenticity. And that's what I love about do-overs.
And just the recognition of the fact that you want to do a do-over, you're already doing something different.
Yes, which is self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-acceptance, self-acknowledgement, all the awesome selves that you want to be, so that you can create real relationships.
So I would definitely encourage you all to try that one. Call it a redo, call it a do-over, call it whatever you want to call it. You know?
And what it's doing is, in those moments, y'all kind of created, like, you kind of played into the dissonance and kind of created a pattern within your dynamic in your relationship. When you do the redo and the re-over, that's what I wanted to say, re-over.
The do-over, redo,
the
re-over.
It's literally going into that space, energetically speaking, and equalizing it. It's neutralizing it. Because earlier he was talking about neutrality. And a lot of times when people hear neutrality, they assume that there's no feeling. Right. And it's not that. It's when you get to a place where you can hold space for your feelings, other people's feelings, see it and feel it, understand it, overstand it. And that's another beautiful gift that is given to us as we, really step deeper into this like walk of unconditional love for ourselves and others, is the gift of clear clarity instantaneously, so that you can have peace about a situation.
Right. Exactly.
That is the result of the effort, brah. Reap and sow, man. You say you want peace. These are the things that you need to get more comfortable with and understand. And we're destigmatizing the problematic areas that we have as human beings as we go through this transition and this evolution of consciousness and becoming more caring of ourselves and other people.
And it's interesting because like it's not easy, like I share this with my clients, and I get a lot of the same feedback. It's like being able to do what you're asking me to do or what you're sharing with me, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around that. It's really difficult to hold that in that moment where we're in the middle of that challenging situation. But that's where the practice comes in, like practices like meditation, practices like mindfulness, practices like journaling, like going to therapy. That's where your self-care comes in, like listening to someone's talk, looking at a YouTube video, an audiobook, reading a book. There's all these different things that you got to be doing. But one of the most important ones that I will always, this is like my go-to, is meditation. Like sitting there in silence, being still, doing nothing, not reacting, not having any kind of like anything coming at you, no input from the outside world. You're shutting your eyes and your ears to everything, and you're just focusing within you. And you're not moving. You're practicing strength. You're practicing being still, no matter what comes at you. If you don't practice that, like if you don't practice that, if I want to be a good hitter at a baseball game, if I want to bat well, hit well,
home runs. You want to hit home runs?
I gotta go to the training cages.
Thank you.
And practice, and I gotta play the game, and I gotta be pitched at by some of the best pitchers. And you know what I just recently found out?
Tell me.
Babe Ruth, who was one of the greats hitting home runs, also
the great Bambino
also held the record for most strikeouts.
Oh, see, I had heard that.
The most strikeouts.
Yep.
And look how great he was, but we don't want to experience that. Again, getting away from the lows, getting away from the failures. We don't want to experience that.
Yep, and that's another reason why that P and P's for patience really comes in handy, because you need to have patience in order to really get to a place of equanimity, to master the things you need to have.
The quote said it.
Inner like fortitude or that stability we were talking about that, like that bamboo, man. Be your oak tree.
Well, speaking of bamboo, how long does the bamboo take before it goes through the ground, pierce to the ground?
First you plant it, and it's like it's a few years, but
3 years before it starts to come through.
And then when it does, it grows like 8 feet or something within like some ridiculous weeks, like 6 weeks. It's like
but imagine you're like the bamboo trying to pierce through. It takes time.
Yeah, you're gonna yell at the sea, come on, hurry up,
bro.
What are you doing?
Waterboard it, man. Like drown it in water. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. No, you know what's neato about bamboo, and you may have to cut this out if it isn't legit, but bamboo has a lot of symbolism in it, and it is part tree, part plant. And that's what's so interesting about it, because it's almost even more
It's
durable.
a hybrid.
It's a hybrid, and that's why it can bend with like hurricane winds, and it's got a lot of bend to it, but it'll
But it's also
stay,
strong.
but it's super like rooted. Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
super strong, and that's why it's like you gotta be like bamboo, man. And that's why I love Kung Fu Panda, because a lot of what Kung Fu Panda was about, right, is believing in self and tapping into your own unique power. And that's another area that we'll eventually get into deeper discussions about, is like, what does it mean to really step into all of your power? Because once you're in that space and you understand how to use it for the greater good of all, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, man.
And so these are all the gifts that you get. You get more patience, you get equanimity, you're accepting, you're passionate, you see the equality and the unity in all things.
Yeah,
and that's
for sure.
ultimately what we want. That's what we want you guys to feel. We want you to feel like you're not alone, and that we're all in this together, learning how to communicate and relate.
There's a better way to do life, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's more
Yeah.
It's about prosperity and joy and vitality. And we almost feel guilty right now. There's a lot of heaviness going on in the world, and there's a lot of just like chaoticness. And now we need to sing and dance and play and pray and meditate and breathe and really like hold it down for LOVE, like a true brotherhood and sisterhood. Division, look where it got us.
It's time for unity.
Time for unity. Illusion of separation will be a thing of the past. That's one of the things we're working on here, is helping you realize, even though we are apart, there is a piece of us that is united in one, and that is the I am.
That's it. We're going to wrap this one up.
So that does it for Equanimity, another episode of the PAZMESA Playhouse numero 3. Thank you so much for tuning
for being
in.
here.
Yes, Janie, the mindfulness coach. Be sure to connect with me and
Angel Santiago, also known as Life Coach Angel. Be sure to follow us and like us on social media.
yes, and also subscribe here to our Rise Above TV YouTube channel. And if this resonates with you, be sure to help us spread.
Like and share.
Yeah, man, like, share, all that jazz.
Comment.
Because of course, one of the things that we're here to do is to offer
Pieces of peace for your everyday life.
Yes, peace
Peace
being
being
you. PAZMESA Playhouse is a Rise Above TV production. To be a part of the mindfulness movement, visit riseabovetv.com and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channel. Be sure to like and follow us on social media.